She had everything except peace, until a deaf girl taught her the value of silence. The silence on the 47th floor cut deeper than any scream ever could. Victoria Ashford stared out at Manhattan through the bulletproof window, but her eyes didn't really see the golden skyscrapers glowing in the sunset. All she saw were red numbers flashing across screens, stocks plummeted, and the empire she had built with her own hands collapsing like a house of cards. At 38, she ran Ashford Industries, a conglomerate moving billions in tech and investments. She owned penthouses on 3 continents, an art collection valued at $200 million, and the kind of respect that inspired fear on Wall Street. But right then, clutching a resignation she still hadn't signed, Victoria felt emptier than a drained bank. The phone rang for the 10th time in 5 minutes. She didn't pick up. She knew it was Mark, her part, probably panicking over the latest headline. The federal investigation into anti-competitive practices was closing in, and the shareholders were demanding her head on a silver platter. That was when something unexpected, a soft knock at the door, not the authoritative tap of her executives, but something gentle, almost hesitant. Victoria frowned. No one ever came up to her floor without clearance, especially not after 6 in the evening. "Come in," said, her voice harsher than she meant it to be. The door eased open to reveal a girl of maybe 16. Brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, blue janitor's uniform too big for her small frame, and in her arm, a battered sketch. But it was her eyes that held Victoria's gaze, wide, expressed, carrying a depth that didn't match her age. The girl didn't speak. Instead, she raised her right hand and made a few quick, fluid gestures. Sign language. Victoria blinked, thrown off. In all her years running this building, she'd never noticed that one of the cleaning staff was deaf. I don't understand," Victoria murmured, feeling strangely exposed. The girl smiled, a shy, genuine smile, and opened her note. She wrote something in neat handwriting and turned it for Victoria to see. "Sorry to bother you. I'm Emma. I work in cleaning. I saw you looked sad." Victoria felt something shift check. When was the last time anyone had cared about her feeling? When had anyone looked at her as a person, not a CEO? "How did you—" Victoria stopped herself, realizing she was speaking to someone who couldn't hear her. She gestured toward the note. Emma understood instantly and offered her a pen. Victoria hesitated, then wrote, "How did you know I was sad?" Emma answered with another smile. "When you can't hear words, you learn to see emotion. You were staring out the window like you wanted to fly away." The words hit Victoria like a punch to the gut. That was exactly it. She wanted to fly away, disappear, start over somewhere no one knew her name. "Why did you come here?" Victoria wrote, surprised by her own curiosity. Emma flipped through a few pages of her sketch until she found a drawer. It was a pencil sketch of a woman sitting behind an enormous desk, gazing out the window. Every line captured the loneliness, the feeling of being trapped in a glass tower. In the corner, sentence in cursive, "Sometimes the ones who have everything need someone who understands the empty." Victoria's eyes stung. You drew me." Emma nodded and wrote, "I come here every night to clean. You're always here late, always alone. My mom used to say, loneliness is the only thing money can't buy or sell." "Your mom was wise," Victoria wrote, her hand trembling just a little. She passed away last year. She was deaf too. She used to say that silence teaches you things noise high." Before we dive deeper into this story, let us know in the comment, where are you watching? Now, enjoy the story. Victoria looked at this girl, Emma, and for the first time in months, felt something other than rage or despair. She felt curiosity. How could someone so young, who probably made in a year what Victoria spent in a week, have so much wisdom in her eye? "What else did your mom say about silence?" she wrote. Emma smiled and began writing a longer answer. She said in silence, "You find out who you really are, not who the world wants you to be. The noise out there sometimes keeps us from hearing our own hearts." Victoria read those words twice, then a third time. When was the last time she'd stopped to listen to her own heart? When was the last time she'd been just Victoria, not the CEO? Not the heiress, not the most powerful woman in Manhattan. "You shouldn't be here," Victoria wrote, though there was no edge to it. "It's dangerous. I'm going through things. Everyone goes through things. Some go through them alone. Others find company along the way." At that moment, the phone rang again. Victoria glanced at it, then at Emma. The girl made a gentle gesture, as if to say, "Go ahead, I'll wait." But Victoria did something she hadn't done in years. She unplugged the phone from the wall. The silence that followed was nothing like any silence she'd ever known. It wasn't the empty hush of an office after everyone had gone home, or the tense quiet of a board meeting. It was a warm, full silence, like an embrace. Emma flipped to a clean page and wrote, "Can I show you something?" Victoria nodded, intrigued. Emma turned to a more detailed drawing. It was the same building they were, but seen from below, from the perspective of someone walking down the street. In the drawing, the windows of the 47th floor glowed like stars, but one of them The window to Victoria's office was dark. "Why is this window dark?" Victoria wrote, "Because real light doesn't come from outside. It comes from inside. When you're locked, the light goes out." Victoria felt a lump in her throat. This 16-year-old had captured in a simple sketch something it had taken her years to even begin to understand. Maybe she'd never truly understood it at all. "Emma," Victoria wrote, "will you teach me about silence?" The smile Emma gave her was like the first ray of sunlight after a storm. She wrote, "I can, but first, you have to want to learn how to listen without your ear." Victoria looked around the dark screen, the piles of the trophies from a career that might be ending. Then she looked at Emma, those eyes that saw more than any ears ever could. "I want to learn," Victoria wrote, and for the first time in a very long while, she meant it. Before we dive into this story, tell us in the comment, where are you watching? All right, now enjoy the story. Emma closed the notebook slowly and looked around the office, curious eye. Victoria followed her gaze, trying to see the space through that girl's perspective. The imported mahogany furniture, the works of art that had cost more than most people earned in a life, crystal trophies celebrating achievements that now felt hollow. "Do you come here every night?" Victoria wrote, still processing how surreal the moment felt. "Yes, always after 7. You never noticed because you were focused on your work." Emma paused, then added, "But I always noticed you." "Eh?" A chill ran down Victoria's spine. How many times had she felt invisible, even as one of the most powerful women in the country? Here was someone who truly saw her, who noticed her presence, her sadness, her lonely. "Why do you draw?" Victoria asked in writing. Emma smiled and opened the notebook to a different page. It was a drawing of an older woman, graying hair and delicate hands holding a knitting. In the corner of the page, a phrase read, "Mama used to say drawing is like praying with your hand." "Your mother?" Victoria wrote, moved by the tenderness of the image. "Elena Rodriguez. She cleaned offices her whole life. When I was little, she would sometimes bring me to work. She said I was her eyes and ears in the world of sound." Emma flipped the page, revealing more drawings of her mother. "She died of cancer last. She only left this notebook and a letter." Victoria felt her chest tight. Can I see the letter?" Emma hesitated for a moment, then turned to a page near the back of the note. Taped there was a handwritten letter, the script shaky but full of warmth. "My dear Emma, if you're reading, it means I've gone into the eternal silence, but I want you to know that silence isn't it's pure presence. You have a gift, my daughter. You can see what others don't, feel what others can't. Use that gift to heal broken hearts. There are many people in this world who are rich in money and poor in love. Be the bridge between worlds. All my love, Mama." Victoria read the letter 3 times, every word echoing in her soul like a distant bell. "She knew," she wrote with a trembling, "your mother knew you would come to maybe. She always said the right people show up at the right time." Emma closed the notebook and looked straight into Victoria's eyes. "You're going through something really hard, aren't you?" Victoria hesitated. How long had it been to talk to anyone about her problems since she'd let herself be vulnerable? "I'm losing everything," finally wrote. "My company, my reputation, maybe even my freedom. There's a federal investigation. They say I committed fraud, manipulated the market, and maybe they're right." Emma read the words carefully, then wrote, "Did you do those things?" The question was simple, direct, without judgment. Victoria looked into those young, honest eyes and felt something she hadn't felt in years, the need to tell the truth. "Not exactly the way they're saying," she wrote, "but I made choices that hurt. I shut down factories, laid off thousands of workers, bought smaller companies just to crush. I always justified it by saying it was business, that it was necessary. But now you see the cost." Victoria nodded, tears stinging her eye. "I built an empire on other people's pain, and now that empire is falling apart, and I don't know who I am without it." Emma was quiet for a long moment, then began writing a longer reply. "My mom used to clean the office of a very rich man. He lost everything too, his family, his friend. He was alone in this same building. on the 35th floor. She told me he would cry every night. What happened to him? Victoria wrote, curiosity flickering through the pain. He learned how to rebuild, not the empire himself. He opened a small school for underprivileged kids. My mom said he found something more valuable than money. Purpose. Victoria felt something stir in her chest. Do you think it's possible to start over after you've lost everything? Emma smiled, a smile that seemed to carry all the wisdom in the world, and wrote, my mom always said life is like a draw. Sometimes you mess up a line, but you can turn the mistake into part of the art. And in that moment, something extraordinary. Victoria, who hadn't cried since she was 12 years old, felt a tear roll down her cheek, then another and another. Emma saw the tears and, without hesitation, reached out and gently touched Victoria's arm. The touch was soft, warm, filled with a compassion Victoria hadn't realized still existed in the world. I'm sorry, Victoria wrote, wiping her eye. I don't usually. Crying is like breathing for the soul. My mom used to say that. Emma opened the notebook to a blank page and began to draw, while Victoria watched. With quick but careful lines, she sketched a tree. Not an ordinary, but one broken by a storm. Branches split, and leaves scattered on the ground. From the cracked trunk, new shoots were starting to grow. "It's beautiful," Victoria wrote when Emma finished. "It's you." Emma wrote below the drawing. "Broke, still alive, still able to grow." Victoria looked at the sketch, then at Emma, then at the window showing the city glowing below. Millions of people living their lives, fighting their battle, finding their purpose. And there she was, at the top of a glass tower, finally understanding that being high up didn't mean being close to the sky. "Emma," Victoria wrote, "will you teach me how to hear the silence?" "I can, but first, you have to stop running." "What do you mean?" Emma pointed to the unplugged phone. "Dark screen, the quiet off. You've always filled your life with noise so you wouldn't have to hear what your heart was saying. Phone, meeting, deal, but the heart only speaks in silence." Victoria looked around and realized Emma was right. For years, she'd been running from silence, always busy, always moving, always doing something so she wouldn't have to stop and think about what really mattered. "What is my heart saying now?" Victoria wrote. Emma smiled and wrote that you're tired of being strong all by yourself. The words hit Victoria like lightning. That was exactly it. She was exhausted from carrying the weight of the world on her shoulder, from making decisions that shaped thousands of lives, from being the person everyone expected to have all the answers. "You're right," Victoria wrote. "I'm tired, so tired." Then read, "Just for today, let the world keep turning without." Victoria glanced at the clock. It was almost 8 p.m. Normally, she would have stayed until mid-viewing planning strategy, fighting invisible battle. But tonight, for the first time in years, she just wanted to stop. "Will you stay a little longer?" Victoria wrote, surprising even herself with the question. Emma nodded and wrote, "I'll stay as long as you need me to." And so, in the quiet of that 47th floor off, two women from completely different worlds began a conversation that would change both of their lives. One spoke in written word, the other in gestures and drawing. They were both learning the same truth, that sometimes, to find yourself, you have to get lost first. The silence that settled between Victoria and Emma wasn't uncomfortable. It felt as if two tired souls had finally found a safe place to rest. Victoria watched Emma arranging her drawing supplies with precise, delicate movements, each gesture filled with a grace she had never noticed in anyone before. "How did you learn to draw so well?" Victoria wrote, genuinely curious. Emma smiled and opened a page in the notebook showing a sketch of her own hands holding a pencil. "My mom taught. She used to say that when you can't speak with your voice, you have to find other ways to speak with your hand." "Did she draw too?" "Not very well." Emma laughed, silent, her shoulders shaking in the sweetest way. "But she'd give me paper and pencils when I got frustrated that people couldn't understand. I discovered I could tell whole stories without words." Victoria felt a pang in her chest. When was the last time someone had cared enough to understand her frustration? When had anyone offered her a way to express herself beyond financial reports and corporate presentation? "Can I see more of your draw?" she asked in writing. Emma hesitated for a moment, then slowly began flipping through the note. Each page revealed a world Victoria had never imagined. There were drawings of ordinary people doing simple things. An old woman feeding pigeons in the park, a man reading a newspaper on the subway, children playing in the rain. But all the drawings had something in common. They captured moments of pure, unposed emotion. "These are extraordinary," Victoria wrote, touched by the sensitivity in every line. "My mom used to say that when you can't hear words, you learn to see the truths people hide behind." Victoria paused on a particular drawing. It showed a woman in an elegant suit, sitting alone in an expensive restaurant, staring at an untouched plate, while people around her laughed and talked. The loneliness was so vividly rendered that Victoria felt like she was looking into a mirror. "Is this me?" she wrote, her heart beating fast. Emma nodded. "I saw you in the French restaurant downstairs last week. You were surrounded by people, but you looked like you were on another planet." Victoria remembered that dinner. It had been a meeting with Japanese investors, all talking about numbers and projections while she pretended to listen. But her mind was somewhere else, thinking about the mother she'd lost when she was 15, the sister who hadn't spoken to her in 10 years, the life she'd built on foundations of ambition and loneliness. "How can you see so?" Victoria wrote, amazed. "When the world is quiet, you learn to read people like open books, their expressions, their posture, the way they hold a glass or stare out a window. Everything tells a story." Emma turned a few more pages until she reached a drawing that made Victoria stop breathing. It was her, but not the CEO. not the millionaire. It was a younger, more vulnerable version of herself, holding the hand of an older woman, clearly her mother, in front of a hospital. How did you? Victoria started to write, but her hand was trembling. I saw a photo on your desk. You keep it hidden behind your computer, but sometimes you look at it when you think no one's watching. Victoria felt her eyes fill with tears. It was true. She kept that photo, the last one taken with her mother before cancer took, hidden away where no one could see. It was her most intimate secret, her deepest vulnerability. You drew it from memory? She asked, astonished. Important drawings stay in your heart, not just your eye. In that moment, Victoria did something she hadn't done in decades. She talked about her mother. Her name was Margaret. Victoria wrote, the words spilling out like a dam break. She was a piano teacher. She died when I was 15. My father never recovered. He started drinking, lost everything. I swore I'd never be vulnerable the way she was. Emma read carefully, then wrote, vulnerability isn't weak, it's the courage to be real. But being real hurts. Victoria replied, when you open up, people disappoint, abandon, use you. Some people do, but others find you exactly because you opened up. Victoria looked at Emma, really looked, not just saw. There was a wisdom in those young eyes that far exceeded her age, a depth of understanding that could only come from someone who had suffered and still chosen to turn that suffering into compassion. Emma, Victoria wrote, can I tell you something I've never told anyone? Emma nodded, closing the notebook and giving her full attention. I didn't commit the fraud they accused me of. Victoria began, but I did something worse. I forgot how to be human. For the last 20 years, I've treated people like numbers, families like statistics. I shut down a factory in Texas and 3,000 people lost their job. I bought a family business in Oregon just to sell off the patents and close the door. I always justified it by saying it was business, that it was necessary for growth. Emma listened, or rather read, every word with absolute focus. But yesterday, Victoria continued, I got a letter from a woman's husband killed himself after I shut down his factory. She has 3 small children and lost their home. Do you know what haunts me the most? I don't even remember his name. To me, he was just a number on a spreadsheet. Emma was silent for a long moment before she began to write. My mom cleaned offices for 30 years. She used to say she saw many powerful executives crying alone after everyone else had gone home. She said power without purpose is the deepest kind of loneliness there is. Your mom was right, Victoria wrote. I have all the power in the world, and I feel completely powerless. Real power isn't controlling other people. It's controlling yourself, choosing who you want to be every day. Victoria looked out the window at the glowing city below. Millions of people living their lives, fighting their battle, loving their family. And here she was, locked in her glass tower, finally realizing built her own prison. Emma, she wrote, can you teach me how to be human again? Emma's smile was like sunrise. I can, but first, you have to forgive the girl who lost her mother at 15 and decided she'd never feel pain again. The word struck Victoria like light. That was exactly it. At 15, watching her father destroy himself with grief, she'd made a promise. She would never be vulnerable, never depend on anyone, never let emotions control her. And she'd kept that promise so well that she'd forgotten how to connect to other human beings. How do you know that? Victoria wrote, stunned, because I lost my mom too, and I had to choose, harden my heart or open it even wider. I chose to open. Aren't you afraid? I'm very afraid, but I've learned fear is like silence. When you stop running, teaches you important things. Victoria felt something shift inside her, like a door that had been locked for years, slowly open. What has fear taught you? That courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and choosing to love anyone. In that moment, Victoria understood she'd found something more valuable than all her millions. A teacher. Not a teacher of business or strategy, but a teacher of humanity. And the most important lesson just beginning. Emma, Victoria wrote, will you show me what the world looks like through your eyes? I will, but you have to be willing to see things that might scare you. Like what? Emma smiled mysteriously and wrote, like the beauty that exists in pain, the richness that exists in simplicity, the power that exists in vulnerability. Victoria took a deep breath, feeling she was about to begin the most important journey of her life. I'm ready, she wrote, and for the first time in 20 years, she truly was. The next morning, Victoria walked into her office with a strange feeling. For the first time in years, she had slept free from the recurring nightmares about bankruptcies and court. Her conversation with Emma had planted something new in her soul, a seed of hope she hadn't realized could still take root, but reality was waiting like a hungry predator. Marcus Wellington, her partner of 15 years, was sitting in her chair when she entered. His face was pale, and in his trembling hands was an official envelope stamped with the Department of Justice seal. Victoria, his voice carrying a gravity she had never heard from him before. "We need to talk, now." She sat in the chair across from her own desk. A bitter irony didn't miss. "Is this about the investigation?" Marcus nodded and opened the envelope with shaking. "They have evidence, Victoria. Email, bank rec, recordings of conversation. Someone inside the company is cooperating with..." Victoria felt the blood drain from her face. "Who? We don't know yet, but there's more." Marcus swallowed, then went on. "They're offering a deal. If you plead guilty to market manipulation and tax fraud, you'll get only 5 years. If we fight and lose, how long? 20 to 25 years. Victoria felt the world tilt around. 25 years. She'd be over 60 when she got out. If she ever got. Her whole life, her entire empire, everything she had fought, gone. "How long have you known this?" Her voice steadier than she felt. "Since yesterday morning. I wanted to be sure before I told you." "And you? Are you involved?" Marcus dropped his gaze. "They offered me immunity in exchange for my testimony." Victoria, I have a family. I have young kids." The betrayal hit her like a punch to the gut. Marcus, the man who had been her right hand, her confidant, the person she'd thought of as a brother, was ready to testify against her, save himself. "I understand," surprisingly without anger. "Maybe Emma had been right about silence teaching you things that noise never could." In the silence of that moment, Victoria understood that loyalty built only on shared interest was never really loyalty at all. "Victoria, I'm sorry. If there was any other way, leave," she said calm. "Gather your things and go." Once Marcus was gone, Victoria sat alone in her office, staring out at the city she had once conquered. Now, that same city was preparing to devour her. The phone rang. It was her return, confirming everything Marcus had said. The walls were closing in fast. Within 48 hours, she would have to decide: accept the deal and plead guilty to crimes she hadn't committed exactly as charged, or fight and risk losing decades of her life. And then thought of Emma. At 7 o'clock that evening, Victoria was waiting in her office when the door opened softly. Emma stepped in with her cleaning, but stopped when she saw Victoria sitting in the dark, lit only by the city's glow. Emma switched on a small lamp and walked over, notebook already in hand. She wrote, "You look different, sadder, but also lighter." Victoria smiled faint. "Can see that? Sadness and relief sometimes show up together, like when you finally set down a weight you were never meant to carry." Emma. Victoria wrote, "I need to tell you, this might be our last conversation." Emma's eye filled with worry. "What happened?" Victoria told her everything. The investigation, Marcus's betrayal, the prosecutor's ultimatum. Emma read every word with complete focus, occasionally asking written questions to understand the detail. When Victoria finished, Emma was quiet for a long time. Then she wrote, "Are you going to take the deal?" "I don't know. If I do, I admit guilt for things I did, but not exactly how they say. If I don't, I could spend the rest of my life in prison for crimes I only partly commit. And what does your heart say?" Victoria laughed bitterly. "My heart is a mess. Yesterday you taught me how to listen to, and today it's screaming so many things. I can't make sense of any of them." Emma turned to a blank page and began to draw. Victoria was fascinated by the complete concentration with which the girl worked. Within minutes, Emma had sketched a woman standing at the edge of a cliff, 2 paths before her, one that descended gently into a safe but shadowed valley, and another that climbed steeply toward a sunlit mountain. "It's a hard choice," Victoria wrote, studying the drawing. "My mom used to say the hardest choices are the ones that teach us the most about who we really are. What if I choose wrong?" Emma turned the page and wrote a sentence that made Victoria's breath catch. "There is no wrong choice when you choose with a clean heart. There's only the path you need to walk to become who you're meant to be." Victoria looked at those words, then back at Emma. How can someone so young be so wise? Suffering teaches you, but only if you let it teach instead of hardening. In that moment, Victoria made a decision that surprised her. "Emma, if I go to prison, will you do something for me? Anything? There's a safe in my apartment. Inside are letters I wrote to the families of the people hurt by my decision. Letters asking forgiveness, offering financial help. I never had the courage to send them." Emma nodded, her eyes shimmering with tears she didn't let fall. "If I can't deliver them myself," Victoria continued, "will you make sure they get to where they belong? I promise. You can still deliver them yourself." "How?" Emma smiled, a smile full of hope Victoria couldn't quite feel, and wrote, "By choosing the mountain path, not the valley. Even if that means 25 years in prison? Even then, because 25 years living with the truth is better than 5 years living with a lie." Victoria felt something stir inside her. It was fear, but also something more, a kind of courage she hadn't known she still possessed. "Emma," she wrote, "can you teach me to be brave? You already are brave. You just forgot." "How do you mean?" Emma flipped through the notebook until she found the first drawing she had ever done of Victoria, the lonely woman staring out the window. Underneath she wrote, "A woman who builds an empire alone has already proven she has courage. Now you just have to use that courage to build something more important." What? A life worth living. Those words echoed through the quiet office like a distant bell. Victoria looked out the window at the glowing city below, and for the first time in months, she didn't feel like a prisoner in her glass tower. Felt like someone about to take flight. "Emma," she wrote, "whatever happened, I want you to know you've changed my life, and you've changed mine. Before I met you, I drew to escape the world. Now I draw to help heal it." Victoria felt tears burning her eyes. "How can I ever thank?" Emma smiled and wrote the answer that would change everything: by being the woman your mother hoped you'd become. And in that moment, Victoria knew exactly what choice she would make. If you believe that love and courage can transform any situation, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Victoria's journey is only just beginning. Victoria's decision echoed through the office like a silent thunder. She knew what she had to do, but knowing and finding the courage to act were two very different things. The next morning, she called her attorney and spoke the words that would change her life forever. "Reject the deal. We're going to trial." The reaction was immediate and devastating. Within hours, the news had leaked to the press. "Victoria Ashford rejects deal, risks 25 years in prison," blared across the front page of every financial paper. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Desperate investors, furious shareholders, journalists hungry for a statement. But it was her sister's call shook her the most. "Victoria, for God's sake, what are you doing?" Sarah's voice trembled with anger and fear. "Take the deal. 5 years will go by fast. 25 years. Victoria, you'll die in prison." "Sarah, I can't admit guilt for something I didn't do exactly the way they claim." "But you did wrong things. You said it yourself. Why can't you just pay the price and move on?" Victoria closed her eye, remembering Emma's words about choosing with a clean heart. "Because if I lie now, I'll spend the rest of my life lying to myself. And if you're convicted, if we lose you forever?" The question hung between them like a sharpened blade. Victoria didn't have an answer, or rather she did, but it wasn't the answer Sarah wanted to hear. "Then at least you'll know I died being honest." Sarah hung up in tears. That evening, Victoria waited for Emma with a nervous anticipation she hadn't felt since she was a child. When the door finally opened and the girl walked in with her gentle smile, Victoria felt as if a weight slid off her shoulder. "I made my decision," Victoria wrote as soon as Emma approached. Emma read the words and nodded as if she'd already known. "How do you feel?" "Terrified, but also free." "It's strange. My mom used to say the truth always scares you before it sets you free." Victoria gave a sad smile. "Emma, I need to tell you something. If I'm convicted, I won't be able to see you anymore. And there's something I want to give you. Before that happened." Emma tilted her head, curious. Victoria stood and walked to the safe, hidden behind a painting. From inside, she retrieved a thick envelope and a small blue velvet box. She carried them back to the table and set them in front of Emma. "Open the envelope first," Victoria wrote. Emma did so carefully. Inside was a legal document and a check. Her eyes widened when she saw the $2 million. "I can't accept," Emma wrote quick, sliding the check back across the table. "You can, and you will," Victoria replied. "It's an education. I want you to go to college, study art, become the artist you were meant to be. The document says the money can only be used for school and art." Emma shook her head, fierce tears rolling down her cheeks. "Emma," Victoria wrote firmly, "you gave me something priceless. You taught me how to be human again. Let me give you something in return. But it's too much. To me, it's only money. To you, it could be the future your mother dreamed." Emma sat silently for a long moment, then picked up the pen and wrote, "My mom always said that when someone offers you wings, you don't turn them down out of pride." Victoria smiled. "Your mom really was wise. Now open the box." Inside the velvet box was a delicate neck with a pendant shaped like a tree. The same tree Emma had drawn. Broken branch, new buds sprout. "I had it made based on your draw." Victoria wrote, "I want you to remember that even when everything seems lost, there's always the chance to grow it." Emma held the necklace in trembling hands and wrote, "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Just like your soul." Victoria replied. In that moment, something extraordinary happened. Emma stood, walked around the table, and for the first time embraced Victoria. It was a gentle, warm hug, filled with a tenderness Victoria hadn't felt since her mother died. She wrapped her arms around Emma, feeling tears slide down her cheeks. When they parted, Emma wrote, "Doesn't matter what happens at the trial. You've already won the most important battle." "What battle?" "The battle against the person you didn't want to be any." Victoria felt a tightness in her throat. "Emma, if I go to prison, will you promise to visit the families of the people I hurt? To deliver the letters yourself? I promise, but you have to promise me something too." anything, that you won't stop fighting, that you'll use this new courage you found to face whatever comes. Victoria nodded, but Emma wasn't finished. And that if you're acquitted, you'll use your second chance to build something beautiful. Like what? Emma smiled and flipped to a page Victoria hadn't seen before. It was a drawing of a school, but not just any. It was a place where deaf, hearing children played side by side, where there were art and garden, where teachers used sign language and spoken words to. It's beautiful, Victoria wrote. What is it? A dream I had, a school where kids like me don't feel different. Just special, where art and education, where nobody gets left behind. Victoria looked at the drawing, then back at Emma, and then again at the drawing. You want me to build this? If you're acquitted, yeah, I want us to turn your money into hope for other kids. The idea struck Victoria like light. This was it. This was exactly what had been missing in her life. A purpose bigger than herself, a way to use her wealth to heal instead of hurt. Emma, Victoria wrote, her hands shaking with emotion. If I walk free from this trial, we'll build this school together. You'll be the artistic director. Emma's smile was like sunrise. Promise, promise. They spent the rest of the evening planning Emma's dreams. Victoria discovered a passion for education, never allowed herself to feel, but a desire to create something that would last beyond her own life. For the first time in decades, she was thinking about the future, not in terms of profit, but in terms of legacy. When Emma finally got ready to leave, she wrote one last message. Remember, when you asked what your heart was saying. Victoria nodded. Now it's singing. Victoria looked at those words and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the hope that everything would work out, but the hope that no matter what happened, she had finally found herself. Emma. Victoria wrote, thank you for teaching me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's feeling afraid and choosing love anyway. Thank you for teaching me that true wealth isn't what you have, it's what you give. When Emma left that night, Victoria remained alone in her office, but for the first time in years, she didn't feel lonely. She felt connected to Emma, to her late mother, to every person she had hurt, and now hoped to help. The trial would start in a week. Victoria didn't know how it would end, but she knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened, she would face it as the woman her mother had raised her to be, and that, she realized, was a victory no court could ever take away. If you believe that love and courage can transform any situation, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Victoria's real battle only just beginning. Victoria Ashford's trial began on a rainy October Monday. Manhattan's golden leaves danced in the wind like autumn tears. The federal courthouse was packed. Journalists, curious onlookers, executives who had once trembled before her power and now came to watch her fall. Victoria walked into the courtroom with her head held high, wearing a simple navy suit, none of the extravagant jewelry she used to flaunt. Pinned to her chest, subtle but visible, was the tree-shaped brooch Emma had designed, her one concession to vulnerability. For the first 3 days, the prosecution presented a devastating case. Damning email, questionable financial records, witnesses painting Victoria as a rude predator. On the 4th day, Marcus Wellington took the stand, avoiding her eyes as he confirmed every accusation. Ms. Ashford knew exactly what she was doing, he said, his voice trembling just slightly. She orchestrated every move to maximize profits, no matter the human cost. Victoria listened without showing emotion, but inside, it felt like she was being torn apart. Not because of the betrayal, she'd already made peace with that, but because of the truths buried in the lie. She really had become someone capable of inflicting so much pain. By the end of the first week, everything seemed lost. Her attorney, David Chen, one of the country's top criminal defense lawyers, fought valiantly, but the evidence was crushing. Victoria could see it on the jurors' face. Most of them had already made up their mind. It was on that Friday evening that everything changed. Victoria was leaving the courthouse when she spotted a familiar figure in the crowd. Emma stood there, holding a small, simple sign. Truth has its own voice. Their eyes met across the sea of people, and Emma smiled, a smile that spoke more encouragement than 1,000 words ever could. That night, Victoria found Emma waiting for her in the office. As always, you came to court, Victoria wrote, still shaking. I promised I'd be with you until the end. Promises are sacred. Emma, you shouldn't be associated with me right now. It could hurt your future. My future is tied to yours. If you fall, I fall too. If you rise, we rise together. Victoria felt tears burn her eyes. The trial isn't going well, I know, but I saw something in court today that you didn't. What? Emma opened her notebook to a page where she had drawn the court, but it wasn't an ordinary sketch. She had captured something the cameras never show. In the drawing, a woman on the jury, older lady with silver hair, was looking at Victoria not with judgment, but with something like understand. You saw this? Victoria wrote, intrigued. Juror number 7. She lost her job when a big corporation shut down the factory she worked, but when the prosecutor showed photo of the families you hurt, she didn't look at them with anger. She looked at you with sadness, like she recognized something in your eye. Real regret. Victoria looked from the drawing to Emma. How do you see these? When you live in silence, you learn to read the emotions people hide behind their words. In that moment, Victoria made a decision, even surprised her. Emma, I want you to come to court tomorrow. Sit in the front row. Why? Because I'm going to do something I've never done in my life. I'm going to tell the whole truth, and I need your courage to keep me strong. Emma nodded, her eyes bright with proud tears. During the second week of the trial, David Chen called Victoria to testify in her own defense. It was a risky move. Defendants almost never take the stand in criminal, but Victoria had insisted. When she climbed into the witness box, the courtroom fell into total silence. Victoria looked at the juror, then at the spectator, and finally, Emma, sitting in the front row, smiling through her tears. Ms. Ashford, David began. Did you commit the crimes you've been accused of? Victoria took a deep breath. Not in the way they've been described, but I did something much worse. A ripple of surprise moved through the court. The judge tapped his gavel. Explain that to the jury. David said, I committed the crime of forgetting that the numbers in my spreadsheets represented real lives. I committed the crime of putting profit over people. I became so obsessed with success that I lost my humanity. Victoria turned and looked directly at juror number 7, the woman Emma had sketched. I shut down facts. I laid off thousands of people. I destroyed family business. I always told myself it was just business, that it was necessary. But the truth is, I became a person who could cause suffering without feeling remorse. Tears slid down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. 3 months ago, I met a deaf girl who cleans off. She taught me something I had forgotten, that wealth without poverty of the soul, that power without compassion is just another form of weakness. She looked over at Emma, who was crying quiet. She showed me the letters I wrote, asking forgiveness from the families I hurt. Letters I was too much of a coward to send. She taught me that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and choosing to do the right thing anyway. The prosecutor stood to object, but the judge made him sit down. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Victoria continued, her voice steady. I'm not here to beg for acquittal. I'm here to ask for the chance to use whatever time I have left to repair what I broke. If you convict me, I will accept, but if you give me a second chance, I promise I will spend every day turning my wealth into hope for the people I hurt. When Victoria stepped down from the stand, the courtroom was absolutely still. She looked at Emma, who smiled at her through her tears, and she knew she had done the right thing. The prosecutor tried to dismantle her testimony in his rebuttal, but something had shifted. Juror number 7 wasn't the only one who was seeing her different. Other jurors were no longer looking at her as the ruthless CEO, but as a broken woman who had finally reclaimed her humanity. That night, Emma was waiting for Victoria in the office with a surprise. What is it? Victoria wrote, seeing a stack of letters on the table. Letters from people who watched your testimony on TV. People you hurt. Victoria felt her heart race. They hate me. Emma shook her head and opened the first letter. It was from a woman in Texas whose family had lost everything when Victoria shut down their factory. Ms. Ash, the letter read, I watched your testimony today. For 2 years, I carried anger in my heart. But today, I saw a woman who found the courage to admit her mistakes. That doesn't erase what happened, but it gives me hope that people can change. If you're acquitted, I'd like to talk about how we can rebuild our community together. Victoria read the letter 3 times, then looked at Emma, her eyes wide. There are 20 more letters like this. Emma wrote, your courage to tell the truth reached hearts you thought you'd lost forever. Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in months. Real hope, not hope of escaping consequences, but hope that maybe, just maybe, there was still time to make things right. Emma, she wrote, no matter what the jury decided, we saved each other. And in that moment, Victoria knew she had already won the most important battle of her life. If you believe that the truth can transform even the hardest hearts, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. The verdict that will change everything is coming soon. The jury deliberated for 3 days. 3 days that felt like 3 eternities to Victoria, who spent every hour pacing through her empty apartment, staring out the window at the city she had once ruled. Every night, Emma came to visit her, bringing new drawings, handwritten words of encouragement in her note. On Wednesday morning, the phone. It was David Chen. Victoria, they've reached a verdict. We need to be in court within the hour. Victoria felt the world spin around. David, whatever happened, you faced this with dignity. That's already a victory. When Victoria arrived at the court, she saw Emma waiting by the entrance. The girl ran up to her and handed her a small envelope. Open this after the verdict. Read the note on the outside. Victoria tucked it into her blazer pocket and walked into the court hand in hand with Emma. Gesture the journalists didn't miss. The judge entered, and the silence in the courtroom was suffocating. Victoria looked at the jury, searching their faces for some clue. Juror number 7, the woman Emma had drawn, looked straight at her and gave a nearly imperceptible nod. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict? The foreman stood. Yes, Your Honor. In the case of the state versus Victoria Margaret Ash, what is the jury's verdict on the charge of market manipulation? Victoria gripped Emma's hand tight. Not guilty. A ripple of surprise passed through the court. Victoria felt her knees weak. And on the charge of tax fraud? Not guilty. And on the charge of anti-competitive practice? Not guilty. Victoria collapsed into her chair, tears streaming down her face. Emma hugged her, quietly crying with relief and joy. All around, the courtroom erupted in conversation and camera flash, but the real surprise hadn't yet come. After the courtroom had emptied out, juror number 7 approached Victoria. She was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and kind eyes. Ms. Ashford, she said soft, my name is Margaret Sullivan. I'd like to speak with you for a moment. Victoria nodded, still dazed. I worked at the factory you shut down in Texas. I lost my job, my home, almost my family. Victoria's chest tight, but when I saw you testify, I recognized something in your eye. The same pain I saw in my own reflection every day after I lost everything. Margaret looked at Emma, then back to Victoria. Your courage to admit your mistake, show real vulnerability, touched me deep. I didn't vote to acquit you because I've forgiven everything. I voted because I believe you can do more good in the world, free than behind bars. Victoria couldn't find words. Margaret continued, but there's a condition, not a legal one in my heart. What is it? Victoria managed to whisper, I want you to come to Texas. I want you to see firsthand what your decisions cost, and I want you to help me rebuild our community. Victoria turned to Emma, who was smiling through her tears. I accept, Victoria said. More than accept. It would be an honor. Margaret smiled gently and began to walk away, but before she left, she paused. Oh, and Ms. Ash, that young woman there, she's a treasure. Take good care of her. When they were finally alone in the hallway, Victoria remembered the envelope Emma had given her. With trembling hands, she opened. Inside was a drawing that made her heart stop. It was her, not as the powerful CEO or the vulnerable defendant, but as a teacher in a classroom filled with deaf and hearing children, all smiling and learning together. And beside her stood Emma, now older, teaching art to the kid. Beneath the drawing was a sentence that changed everything. I dreamed of our future. Do you want to make it real? Victoria looked at Emma, then at the drawing, then back at Emma. Is this what you want? To build this school together? Emma nodded emphatically and wrote, I want to spend the rest of my life helping you turn pain into hope. Victoria felt something crack open inside her, not from sorrow, but from a joy so fierce it almost hurt. Emma, she said aloud, knowing Emma couldn't hear her, but needing to speak the words. You saved, not just from prison, from myself. Emma read her lips and smiled, then wrote, we saved each other. In that moment, Victoria made the most important decision of her life. Not a business decision, not a strategic move, something from her heart. Emma, I want to adopt. I want you to be my daughter. Officially, I want us to build this school together, as a family. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She wrote with a trembling, my mom always said family isn't who shares your blood, it's who shares your heart. And do we? We do. Since the very first day, Victoria hugged Emma tight, feeling as if she'd finally found what she had been searching for her entire life without even knowing. It wasn't power, it wasn't money, it wasn't success, it was connection, it was love, it was purpose. When they left the courthouse that afternoon, they weren't just a lonely millionaire and an orphaned girl. They were mother and daughter, united not by blood, but by something far strong, choice to love each other and turn their pain into a force that would help others. The first thing they did was visit the cemetery where Emma's mother was buried. Victoria laid flowers on the grave and spoke aloud. Elena, I promise I will care for your daughter as if she were my own, and I promise we will honor your memory by building something beautiful together. Emma touched her mother's head, then reached for Victoria's hand. She didn't need words. The silence said everything. That night, back at the apartment, Victoria and Emma began officially planning the school of their dreams. They worked late, sketching floor plans, discussing curriculum, imagining what it would be like to watch deaf and hearing children learning and laugh. What should we call the school? Victoria wrote. Emma smiled and wrote, Elena Rodriguez School, in honor of the woman who taught me that silence can be the most powerful voice in the world. Victoria felt tears sting her eye. Perfect, absolutely perfect. While Emma slept in the guest, which Victoria had already decided would be her daughter's permanent room, Victoria sat by the window, gazing out at the lit-up city. 3 months she had been a powerful but hollow woman, commanding an empire but lost in her own life. Now, she was a free woman with a clear purpose and a real family. The silence in the apartment was no longer lonely. It was filled with possibility, love, and hope. And for the first time in her adult life, Victoria Ashford was truly it. If you believe love transform even the most wounded hearts, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Victoria and Emma's journey is only just beginning. 6 months after the trial, Victoria and Emma were on a small private plane heading to Millbrook, Texas, the town where Victoria had once shut down the factory that sustained 3,000 families. It was the first time she would set foot in the place where her corporate decisions had caused so much human suffering. Emma held Victoria's hand during the flight, sensing the tension radiating from the woman she now called Mom. Over the past month, they had become inseparable, working side by side on the plans for the Elena Rodriguez, which would be built in Manhattan. But this trip was different. This trip was about facing the past head-on. "I'm scared," Victoria wrote in the notebook she now carried everywhere to talk with Emma. "Being scared is normal. Courage is going anyway," Emma replied, giving her an encouraging smile. When the plane touched down at Millbrook's small airport, Victoria saw a crowd waiting. Her first instinct was panic. She assumed they were protest people, angry and ready to confront. But when they stepped off the plane, she realized many of them were holding welcome signs. Margaret Sullivan stood at the front of the group, smiling warmly. Beside her was a man in his 40s, wearing a firefighter's uniform, and a young woman cradling a small child. "Victoria," Margaret said, hugging her like an old friend. "Welcome to Millbrook. These are a few people who wanted to meet." The man stepped forward. "I'm Tom Rodriguez, the fire chief. I lost my job when the factory closed, but I managed to get back on my feet. I heard about the school you're planning to build. My daughter is deaf, like your Emma." Victoria felt her heart tighten. "Your daughter, she's at school right now, but she'll be thrilled to meet you both." She drawled, "Just like Emma. Maybe they can get to know each other." Emma smiled and signed something quickly with her hand. Tom replied fluent, and Victoria realized father and daughter had learned to communicate in a way she and Emma were still discovering. The young woman stepped forward, child in her arm. "I'm Sarah. This is my daughter, Lily. My husband worked at the factory. When it closed, we almost split up, but we learned that sometimes the worst things that happen can lead you somewhere better." Victoria looked at the child's bright, angelic face. "What do you mean?" "My husband always dreamed of being a teacher, but he never had the courage to quit. When he was laid off, he decided to go back to school. Now he's a teacher at the local elementary, and he's happier than he's ever been." Margaret touched Victoria's arm. "Not all the stories ended well, Victoria. I won't pretend. Some families really did fall apart, but others found strength they didn't know they had." Victoria felt her eyes sting. "I want to meet all of the ones who rebuilt and the ones who are still trying. And you will. But first, there's something we'd like to show you." Margaret led them to the center of town, where the factory used to stand. Victoria expected to see an empty lot or some crumbling ruin. Instead, she found a vibrant community park full of children playing, families picking, and in the center a community garden where dozens of people worked side by side. "What is this?" Victoria asked. "Oh, after the factory closed, the city bought the land for almost nothing. The community organized and turned it into something that serves everyone. The garden feeds 50 families. The park has become the heart of town." Emma was sketching furiously in her note, capturing the beauty of it all. Victoria peeked over her shoulder and saw that Emma had drawn not just the park itself, but the people, their expressions of peace. Children laughed, old friends talking on bench. "Emma," Victoria wrote, "are you seeing something I'm not? I'm seeing that sometimes when something dies, something even more beautiful grows." Emma answered. At that moment, a girl of about 12 came running up to them. It was clearly Tom's daughter. She had the same expressive eye and signed as she spoke. Emma and the girl connected instantly, their hands moving in a fast, graceful dance of conversation. "What are they saying?" Victoria asked Tom. "My daughter Sophia is telling Emma about a project working on at school, a mural about hope. Emma's offering to help." Victoria watched, marveling at how they communicated without a word, but with a richness spoken conversations often lacked. "Tom," Victoria said soft, "can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you forgive me for what my decisions did to your family?" Tom paused, looking at his daughter. "Victoria, I won't lie. There were nights I lay awake, furious, imagining what I'd say to you if I ever got the chance. But you know what changed my perspective?" "What?" "Sophia. When she was born deaf, I was terrified. I thought it would be a limitation. But she taught me that what we see as limitation can become superpower. She sees the world in a way I never could." Tom looked Victoria straight in the eye. "Your decisions forced us to find strengths we didn't know we had. That doesn't erase the pain, but it turned it into something meaningful." Victoria felt a lump rise in her throat. "I want to help. I want to do something to repair the damage." "You already are. are. Margaret said gently, the school you're going to build will help kids like Sophia all over the country, but there's something else we can do. What's that? Margaret smiled. How about building a second Elena Rodriguez right here in Mill Place where deaf and hearing children in this region can learn together? Victoria looked at Emma, who was practically glowing with excitement. Can we do that? Emma wrote. We can do anything. Victoria replied. We have resource. We have purpose. And now, we have a community. That night, Victoria, Emma, and the Millbrook families gathered at the community hall to share a meal. Victoria had expected hostility, confrontation, maybe even violence. Instead, found something she hadn't dared hope, a community that had transformed its pain into strength. During dinner, Sophia came over to Victoria with a drawing. It was a portrait of her and Emma together, not as they were now, but older, surrounded by dozens of deaf and hearing children, all smiling and learning. It's beautiful, Victoria whispered. May I keep it? Sophia nodded and handed her the drawing. On the back was a message written in a child's careful hand. Thank you for learning that mistakes can become good things. Victoria felt tears slip down her face. Emma, who had been watching, came closer and wrote, see, forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about turning what happened into something good. How did you get so wise? Victoria asked. My mom used to say, wisdom doesn't come from age. It comes from choosing to learn from pain instead of growing bitter. That night, in a small Millbrook hotel room, Victoria and Emma stayed up late planning not one, but 3 Elena Rodriguez schools, one in Manhattan, one in Millbrook, and a third in a place they hadn't chosen. Emma. Victoria wrote, do you realize what's happening? What? We're building a family, not just the two of us. All these people choosing to turn pain into hope. Emma smiled and wrote, my mom always said, family isn't who shares your blood. It's who chooses to walk the same path. Victoria looked out the window at the sleeping town of Millbrook. 6 months, this place had represented her greatest shame. Now, it represented her greatest hope. Emma, she wrote, thank you for teaching me that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. Thank you for teaching me that love can grow in the most unexpected places. And that night, in a small Texas town, 2 women from entirely different worlds slept peacefully, knowing they had found not only each other, but a mission that would last the rest of their lives. Forgiveness had become the bridge between a painful past and a future full of possibility. 2 years after the trial, first Elena Rodriguez opened its doors in Manhattan. The 5-story building on the Upper West Side was an architectural masterpiece that blended beauty, functionality. Wide windows let natural light flood the class. Broad hallways made it easy to communicate in sign language, and every space was designed to be a complete sensory experience. That September morning, Victoria stood in the main hall, watching deaf and hearing children walk in together for the first day of school. Some chattered excitedly out loud, others signed in fluid gestures, and many did both at once. It was exactly the vision Emma had drawn 2 years earlier. Emma, now 18 and officially Victoria's adopted daughter, stood beside her in a white lab embroidered with the school's logo. She had graduated high school with honor and chosen to postpone college for a year to help establish the school. Her hair was longer, twisted into a neat bun, and her eyes shone with the confidence of someone who had found her purpose. Are you nervous? Victoria typed on the tablet they now used for quick conversation. A little, but the good. Like when you're about to make a dream real. Victoria smiled, remembering how Emma always knew the right words. In the past 2 years, they had become not just mother and daughter, but true partners in the mission to transform education. Victoria had discovered a love for pedagogy she never knew she had, while Emma had developed administrative skills that impressed even the most seasoned consultant. The opening ceremony was scheduled for 10 o'clock. The main auditorium was full of parents, educators, local officials, and journalists. Victoria had insisted Emma be the one to deliver the keynote address. After all, this school was her dream brought to life. When the moment came, Emma stepped on stage with a calm confidence that made Victoria's heart swell with pride. She didn't speak, she never would, but her hands moved through the air in a graceful dance that held the entire audience silent. Beside her, an interpreter voiced every sign. My name is Emma Rodriguez Ash, the interpreter said, echoing Emma's hand. And this school was born from an unlikely meeting between 2 people who needed each other without realizing. Victoria felt tears sting her eye. Emma continued, my biological mother, Elena Rodriguez, cleaned offices her whole life. She taught me that silence is not absent, it is pure present. When you can't hear words, you learn to see the truth people hide behind. The audience was rapt. Emma gestured toward Victoria. My adoptive mom, Victoria Ash, taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing love anyway. Together, we learned that family isn't who shares your blood, it's who chooses to walk beside you. Victoria stood and stepped onto the stage, taking her place next to Emma. For the first time in public, she signed, still basic, but but clear while she spoke. This school, Victoria said, signing along with each word, is proof that the most improbable connections can yield the most beautiful out here. Deaf and hearing children don't just study together. They learn that differences are gifts, not obstacles. After the ceremony, Victoria and Emma toured the building with the first student. In the art room, Sofia Rodriguez, the little girl from Millbrook, now living in New York to attend the school, was showing other kids how to draw using the techniques Emma had developed. "Look at this," Victoria typed, pointing to Sofia. "She's teaching the other children to listen with their eyes, the way you taught me." Emma smiled and typed back, "The best part of teaching is watching your students become teachers." In the adapted music room, deaf children heard music through floor vibrations and synchronized light, while hearing children learned to feel rhythm in ways they'd never imagined. It was a silent symphony deeper than any sound. At the end of the day, when the last child had left, Victoria and Emma sat in the school's inner garden, a peaceful space, fountain in the center, and benches scattered among young trees would grow for decades. Emma, Victoria typed, "Do you realize what we built? A school? More than that, we built a new kind of family, not just the two of us, but all these children, these parents, these teachers, a family bound by shared purpose." Emma nodded and typed, "My mom, Elena, always said real family is the people who choose to stay when things get hard, and we chose to stay." Victoria wrote back, "Through the trial, through the doubt, through all the obstacles, and we'll keep choosing every day." In that moment, Victoria realized she had finally found she'd been searching for her whole life without knowing. A home that wasn't a place, but a feeling. The feeling of belonging, of purpose, being exactly where she was meant to be. "Emma," she wrote, "there's something I want to give you." Victoria pulled a small velvet box from her pocket. Inside was a simple, elegant ring, engraved with a tiny tree, the same tree Emma had sketched the first night they met. "It's not an engagement ring," Victoria wrote, smiling. "It's a promise ring, a promise that we'll always be family, no matter what." Emma held the ring with trembling hands and wrote, "It's beautiful, but you don't need to give me gifts to prove you love me. I know, but I want you to have something tangible to remember, that you changed my life complete." Emma slipped the ring on her finger and typed, "You changed mine too. You didn't just give me a family, you gave me a mission." They sat in a comfortable silence, watching the sun set through the school's tall window. Around them, the building still smelled of fresh paint and new possibility. "Do you know what moves me the most?" Victoria wrote. "What? 20 years from now, some of these kids will be building their own school, their own family, their own dream." And it all started with a deaf girl brave enough to walk up to a woman who'd lost herself. Emma smiled and typed, "And a woman who was brave enough to let herself be found." When they finally stood to go home, the apartment they now shared, and that Victoria had redesigned to meet Emma's need, Victoria glanced back one last time at the school. "Elena would be proud," she said out loud, knowing Emma could read her lips. Emma nodded, touching the tree pen always wore. "She is proud. I can feel it." That night, back at home, they worked on plans for the second Elena Rodriguez school, which would open in Millbrook the following year. This time, it didn't feel like work. It felt like joy. They laughed, made jokes, and dreamed up ideas that might just be crazy enough to work. Victoria looked over at Emma, focused on a draft of the floor, felt a gratitude so fierce it almost hurt. 2 years ago, she had been powerful but hollow. Now, she was whole. "Emma," she typed, interrupting her daughter's work. "Yes, thank you for teaching me that home isn't where you're born. It's where you choose to grow." Emma smiled, the same smile that had saved Victoria on that first night in the office, and wrote, "Thank you for teaching me that love isn't some fun. It's something you build, brick by brick, choice by choice." And that night, in a Manhattan apartment that had become a true home, two women the world never would have expected to cross paths slept peace, knowing they had built something that would last far beyond their own lives. The Elena Rodriguez School was just the beginning. The real legacy was the proof that love can grow in the unlikeliest place and change the world. If you believe real love can spring from the most improbable connect, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Victoria and Emma's final chapter is about to reach its most powerful moment yet. 5 years after the opening of the first Elena Rodriguez, Victoria stood on stage at Lincoln Center in New York, facing an audience of more than 2,000. It was the annual awards ceremony of the Elena Rodriguez Foundation, now one of the most respected educational organizations. Emma, now 23 and a graduate in special education with a specialization in art therapy, stood beside her. Her hair was pulled back in an elegant French twist, and she wore a navy blue dress that made her expressive eyes stand out even more. On her chest, she wore the tree-shaped pin Victoria had given her years earlier, now a widely recognized symbol of the foundation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria began at the microphone, her words simultaneously translated into sign language by Emma. Today, we celebrate not only 5 years of transformative education, but 5 years of proof that love can grow in the most unlikely place. The audience erupted warm applause. Victoria glanced at Emma, who smiled back with quiet encouragement. Continue. When I met Emma Rodriguez, I was a woman lost in my own success. I had everything money could buy, but I'd forgotten what really mattered. Human connect, family. She paused, remembering that first night in her off 47th floor. Emma taught me that true wealth isn't in what you accumulate, but in what you share. That real power isn't in controlling others, but in changing lives. And that family isn't defined by blood, but by the choice to walk together. Emma stepped closer to the microphone. For the first time at a public event, she decided to speak. Her voice was soft, slightly different in tone from her deaf, but so full of feeling that the room fell into complete silence. My mother, Ellen, always said that silence teaches things noise hides. Emma began, her words echoing across the auditorium. Today, 5 Elena Rodriguez schools are thriving across the country. More than 3,000 deaf, hearing children learn together, play together, grow together. The crowd rose to their feet in a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Victoria felt tears streaming down her cheeks as she thought about how Emma had found her voice, not just through speak, but through the impact she was having on the world. After the ceremony, the two of them walked together through Central Park. It had become their tradition. After every big event, they took a walk to process everything and dream about what was next. Emma, Victoria said, do you realize what we've built? Emma smiled. We built more than school. We built a new way of seeing the world. What do you mean? When people see deaf and hearing children playing side by side, they learn that differences aren't barriers, they're gifts. When they see you and me together, they understand that family can be born out of love, not just blood. Victoria stopped and looked at Emma. You know you're ready to lead the foundation on your own, don't you? Emma blinked in surprise. What do you mean? I mean you don't need me to make the big decision. You've become an extraordinary leader. It's time for you to fly solo. But we're a team, and we always will be. But you're 23, with a clear vision for the future, and skills that amaze me every day. The Elena Rodriguez Foundation deserves a president who understands the mission from the inside out. Emma was quiet for a long moment, taking in Victoria's work. And you? What will you do? Victoria smiled soft. Remember what you taught me about silence? That it teaches things noise hides. Exact. I want to spend time in that side, figuring out what my next mission. Maybe write a book about our journey. Maybe travel the world visiting other inclusive schools. Or maybe just be a proud mom, watching her daughter change the world. Emma hugged her tight. You already changed my world completely, and you saved my soul, Victoria said. That night at home, they worked side by side one last as co-directors of the foundation, preparing for the transition. Victoria watched Emma reviewing budget, approving new programs, coordinating with the directors of all 5 schools, and felt a maternal pride so deep it almost overwhelmed. Emma, Victoria said, there's something I want to give you. She went to the safe and took out a thick, worn on. These are the original letters I wrote to the families I hurt, the ones you encouraged me to send. Emma opened the envelope and found not only the letters, but dozens of replies. They wrote back? Emma asked, her voice trembling. All of them. And do you know what's even more incredible? Many of those families work with us now. Margaret Sullivan is the principal at the Millbrook School. Tom Rodriguez is head of Safe 3 of our camp. Sarah Chen developed our family support program. Emma read a few of the letters, tears sliding down her cheeks. They forgave you. More than they became our extended family. Proof that forgiveness can turn into partner and pain can become purpose. Emma carefully put the letters back. I'll keep them forever. No, Victoria said, I want you to use them. When you face hard moments as a leader, when you wonder if you're doing the right thing, read these letters. They'll remind you that transformation is possible, that people can change, that love always wins. The next morning, Victoria woke early and found Emma in the kitchen making coffee. Over the years, they developed a rich coffee together, reviewing the day's schedule, and always a moment of gratitude. What are you grateful for today? Victoria asked, as she did every morning. I'm grateful I found not just a mom, but a mentor who taught me that leadership means serving others, not yourself. Victoria's heart warmed, and I'm grateful I found not just a daughter, but a teacher who showed vulnerability is strength, not weak. They finished their coffee in easy silence, both knowing one era was ending and another was just beginning. Later that day, Victoria was in her old off 47th floor, now transformed into a foundation conference, when Emma walked in holding something behind her back. Close your eye, Emma. When Victoria opened them, she saw a framed picture on the wall. It was the original sketch Emma had drawn that first night. A lonely woman looking out the window. But Emma had added something. A second figure, a young girl walking toward her with a notebook in her hand. It's perfect. perfect, Victoria whispered. It's our story, Emma said. The moment two lost souls found each other and decided to save. Victoria looked at the drawing, then at Emma, then out the window at the city skyline. The same window she'd once stared through in despair was now filled with promise. Emma, Victoria said softly, are you ready to be president of the Elena Rodriguez Foundation? Emma took a deep breath and smiled with the quiet certainty of someone who had found her purpose. I'm ready. Then it's official. The foundation is yours. Emma hugged, and in that embrace was all the gratitude, love, and history of everything they had shared. Thank you for teaching me that family is a choice we make every day, Emma whispered. Thank you for teaching me that sometimes silence is the most powerful voice, Victoria replied. And there, in the same office where it had all begun, two women who fate had thrown together said goodbye to one era and stepped into the future together, but each following her own path of transformation. The Elena Rodriguez schools would keep growing, the foundation would keep changing lives, and the story of Victoria and Emma would keep inspiring people everywhere to believe that love can be born in the unlikeliest place and grow until it transforms not just two lives, but thousands. Silence had taught them its greatest lesson. Sometimes, to find your voice, you first have to learn to listen with your heart. Thank you for following Victoria and Emma's powerful journey. If their story moved you, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove love can change everything. Tell us in the comments which part of their journey touched you most, and what kind of story would you love to see in our next video. Remember, just like Victoria and Emma discovered, real family is the one we build through love, purpose, and devotion. See you in the next story.